Hello, my name is Greg Clark. I'm a WikiTree member and an app developer. And in this video, I'd like to demonstrate the latest features of the SixDegrees app that were added as of August 13th, 2022. So for these, the feature that's added is specific to the FamilyTree mode. So we're going to switch over there. Before we do that, I think I'm going to turn off the photo. So when you load a profile and it has a photo in the middle, that's by default, but you can always turn that off if you want to by clicking on the show photo, and then you'll see it has an X show photo, so it hides the photo. So if that takes up too much room, and when we switch to family tree mode, sometimes the photo is pretty large and kind of overshadows everything else. For this demo, I'm going to leave the display in dot mode, the very simplest one. That way I don't have to worry about showing any names of living people, and I can demonstrate everything we need to do with individual dots representing people, and also will be a little more respectful of the screen real estate, and you'll be able to see a bit more of what's going on. So here we are. I've got three generations of ancestors showing, and one, I can maybe make that two, generations of descendants. That's kind of a little skewed, so I'm going to just put it back to 1 for now. And if I add one more degree of ancestors, there we are, and even one more. Let's have a look-see at that. Okay, so there you go. So by default, this the SixDegrees app tries to format your family tree in as efficient a way as possible, and so at each generation, it makes families one beside the other, and it tries to close up gaps. And then, of course, going from one generation to the next, it has to draw the connectors, and sometimes those work out very nicely if your families are nice and evenly spaced, and sometimes if you have really large families on one side and small families on the other, you end up having the connectors going all over the place, and having to travel huge distances to find their next next connection. So there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to, tidy up the chart or make it a little, have a little more control over that, then this new feature that I've added will be what you're looking for. So to find that, go into the settings menu, and now there is an option right above the show photo, in fact. It's called show editing tools. Now by default it's turned off because it wasn't there before, so someone who's using the app and hasn't used this before won't be surprised. But if you want to, then you can turn it on by clicking on that, and then the X turns to a check mark, and now all of a sudden on your far left of your screen there will be a blue pencil. And when we click that blue pencil, then we get some additional controls that are on the left side of the screen. So the first one is a set of two yellow arrows, and they control what happens when you click on the yellow arrows that happen to appear in the middle of your family tree chart. So you'll see that every ancestral pair has a set of yellow arrows connected to them. And if you click on one of those arrows, then that slides that set of ancestors over. So you see I slid that great-great-grandparent, set of great-grandparents. If I click on this one here, it's going to slide not only the grandparents, but all of the family that's connected with them. And if I click on this one, again, it's going to slide the whole family unit over. Now, when it does that, you'll see that the connectors are no longer connected because we're in edit mode now. If we hit the X here, we're going to cancel out of edit mode, and those those changes will not have taken effect. So if I just hit the display button again, it's going to redraw it just as it was. Now, if I go back into edit mode and make those changes that I did, and this time I hit the green accept button, it's going to accept those changes, and then it's going to redraw it with the connectors in the right place. So you can use that to slide things over. And this ×1 is the multiplier effect. So if you for instance, over here, say we want to slide this whole family unit over a fair bit. When you click on it once, you see how far it goes. It goes about 20 pixels or so. If you want to make it slide further, we can increase the ante up by checking number 3, and then so if I click on it now, it's going to go 3 times as far. And in fact, if you use the keyboard to type any number from 1 to 9, that will automatically change. So if I hit the 5, it's going to go by 5 times up. So if I do that, this one should whip over a fair bit. Ooh, look how far that went. And if you use the down arrow here, you can actually go to a half or a tenth. So if you really want fine motor control, let me hit the accept and you'll see. So that's far, it's a little wonky, isn't it? But anyways, that's what we told it to do. Whether that made sense or not, so this is really weird. This happens sometimes when from one generation to the next there's a lot of overlapping. It tries its best not to overlap, and sometimes it's successful, sometimes it does strange things. So now if I move this family, well, that will do something. Let's see what it does. Yeah, well, that helped that one out. This one here now needs to be over. So that's basically what the yellow arrows are for. And if we want to just reset this icon at the very bottom, that resets back to the factory defaults, as it were. So you can always go back to where things were, the automatic algorithm that the program uses. So that explains the top and the very bottom one. So now, in between, let's look at those. Basically, what these double arrows refer to the way each family is formatted at each generation level. So to show that better, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase all the way up to, let's say, 7 generations. So that's going to be a very busy. See, look how large this is going to be. So here we are at the very top. So here we have Jean Baudot, who is actually the fourth great grandmother, I believe, of Achille Marcoux, 7 degrees away from Achille, who is the root person. So at the very top level, you'll have someone. There'll just be an ancestral pair at the end of each line. At the next level, so that was actually the 5th great grandmother. So at the 4 times you'll have the 4 times great grandparents and their siblings. Okay, for example, there, the sibling of the 4th great grandmother. And then at the next level, you'll have the 3 times great grandparents, their siblings, and their children. So you see, you've got one generation and then the next generation. And then going down, you'll have the generation with the great grandfather, their children, the children, the grandchildren, and then sometimes you'll see an additional. If there were enough profiles, there would be another layer underneath that, and so similar down here. So you can see it's going to go. There's as you get closer to the primary generation, to the central person, you'll have multiple generations or multiple family layers per generation. Now, at each of those things, you'll see the level where the direct ancestors are, and then you'll have their siblings and then their siblings' families. So what these arrows represent, and I'm going to turn this off for a moment. What these arrows represent is the way each of the families is oriented. So by default, the generation that is even with the ancestors, so the direct ancestors and their sibling, that family unit is always displayed horizontally. And then you can see the next family, so the siblings, direct children, they are also displayed horizontally. But the next layer down, according to this layout, will be displayed vertically. So if I go over here, let's see down here. So here, this is the layer with the direct descendants is horizontal. Their children are represented horizontally, but then the next family units are displayed vertically. And then if I go down to this, where there's another additional family unit, then that family unit is displayed horizontally. And in this layout, it alternates. After the third generation, alternates between vertical and horizontal. Now, what I've built into the app is there are sort of four defaults, and you can, if you click on the family tree icon when you're inside the family tree layout, then it will alternate between those four. And if you only have a few degrees of ancestors showing, then sometimes you won't even, they may look exactly the same. But if you have all 7 degrees, then they are fairly different from each other. So here's the one example. So it's got 2 horizontals, then it alternates between vertical and horizontal. If I click it one more time, the next layout is all horizontal. So if let's have a look. Let's look at that again. All horizontal. See there, horizontal, horizontal, and so on. So this is going to be a very, very wide family tree printout. And of course, this will look, whether you're using just dot mode like I am, or using all. So you've got all of the full names and the dates and everything. It'll still use the same sort of layout. So it would be a very, very long, wide printout, but might be something you want for, say, a family reunion. If I click it one more time, I believe the next layout default is going to be, okay, so it's alternating between some horizontal and some vertical. Let's try another one. Some more alternating. Then we're back to the all horizontal, and then the next one should be all vertical. Okay, and let me just hit check mark there. There we go. So there's, except for the very first generation where the direct ancestors and their siblings, that's always going to be a horizontal relationship just because of the way the chart works. But after that, then everything else is vertical in this layout. And this one will give you a much taller display. And in some cases, that will make it look sort of more portrait-y like, but likely more than one sheet of paper. And sometimes, actually, when it's all vertical like this, it will actually be sort of more of a square. You'll end up more evenly distributed, but then that varies from family to family, of course. So those are the default ones, but the beauty of having this is that we can change that. So say we want to customize this. So we want the first one's always, the one that's in black, I can't change that if I click on it. That black one is solid. The very first generation that's even with the direct ancestors, always going to be horizontal. The next one we can change. So I'm going to make that horizontal. I'm going to put the next one vertical, and then I'm going to do two horizontals in a row, and then, oh yeah, maybe we'll leave 2 verticals in a row. And then we're going to accept that. And let's see what that looks like. So let's just remind ourselves what we're looking for. So we want 2 horizontals, vertical, horizontal, horizontal, vertical, vertical. And remember, at the very top of the chart, you only have 1 extra family, then 2 extra families. So you sort of have to go down to see the effect. There we are. So there's a horizontal, horizontal, then vertical. Then we horizontal, horizontal, a vertical family, then with a horizontal subfamily there, and so on. So you can play around with that to sort of customize how your family is represented. If you want, if there's one configuration that is sort of more compact than others, then you can do that. The at the bottom here, these sort of these hanging grapes, as it were, that icon, if that is turned on, I'm going to turn it on now. What that does is that sets a flag so that the very last family at any generation, descendants generation level, instead of being horizontal or vertical, will show in what I call cluster format. So if there's more than 3 people, then they sort of cluster underneath. And that is a more compact way of a family, showing a family. So I'm going to accept that. And then you see that, so here, for this generation, for example, it should have been horizontal and another horizontal, right? We had 2 horizontals in a row. So the black arrow means the horizontal for the direct ancestor and their siblings. Then the next layer should have been horizontal, but because we have the cluster mode enabled for the final family of that generation, it's redone those in cluster mode. And so you can see this family here of 13 kids would be really wide and would actually space that out a lot. And if it was in vertical mode, it wouldn't be really tall and add extra space, vertical space there that isn't really necessary. So that's a much more compact way of showing that. And then when we get down here, it's the 3rd generation that gets the cluster mode. I personally prefer that because it does sort of save some space. And it's kind of a neat little visual, I think, too. So that is by default on, actually. I turned it off when we were doing some of these demonstrations earlier, just so you could see the difference between vertical and horizontal for some of those, but I like that. The last feature in this set of editing controls are these eyes, and that is in case you want to hide some of the generations. So the way the app works, of course, is it finds it finds up to 7 degrees of connections, and then in family tree mode, it maps all of those 7 degrees of connections in a family tree chart. And as we talked about earlier, the very top of the chart is your greats that are 7 degrees out from you, and that there's only the grandfather, grandmother of each couple. The next one, there's the grandfather, grandmother of each couple plus their siblings, and then you add the siblings plus their siblings' children, and so on. So at each direct descendants generation level, there's one more family to add. And so you can see all of the 7 degrees of connections that way, which is very cool. But if you are wishing to produce a family chart that is a little more balanced in nature, so that at every sort of direct descendants generation level, you're seeing the same thing, then this is one way of controlling that. So if I were to hide, so example, if I click the very top eye, so that basically hides all of the generations except for the generation with the direct descendants and their siblings. So let me hit the check mark for that. And then you see you only get the direct descendants and their siblings, direct descendants and their siblings, direct descendants and their siblings, all the way down. I'm going to actually reduce to 5 degrees just so that it fits a little better on the screen. Okay, so that's kind of a neat option. The one I kind of like showing, well, there's the direct descendants, their siblings, and from the next, when it's available, the siblings' families. So that's kind of my favorite look to it. And these eyes actually refer to the ancestors. They don't actually change what's displayed in terms of descendants, because you can still show as many degrees of descendants as you wish. That's so I could show, I'm not sure how many more degrees there are. So there we go. That's 4 degrees of Achille's descendants. Though with the pencil here, I'm actually only showing two sets of families per generation. So, and then you can, if we added another, again, it would add on grandchildren as well, if you wished. So another set of controls that you can play with to get to customize your family tree chart um, for your own needs, in case you want to share it with family or use it for a family reunion or anything like that. So I hope you find that interesting, and then I think that's about it. The in the other views, I did add a link to Steve's new timeline app, so that will automatically load up there. Uh, there we go. So that's a cool thing you might want to check out if you haven't seen that one already. And I've also created a help page, which is a free space page on WikiTree, which has details about all of the updates that I've done. And we'll shortly have more details about each of the features of the menu bar, button bar, and all of the two different modes for using the app. So something else to look forward to, or if you wish to review some of this stuff. So thank you very much, and take care. Have a great day. Bye.